The perception that the only way to hide anything from a black man is putting it in a book has once again been defied. Gbenga X-Adebija is not just writing, but he's been able to articulate his thoughts in a book entitled Magnificat.
Magnificat is a collection of short stories, some of which were written over 20 years ago. They existed in various forms. And so last year I decided that, before I turned 40, I would put together a collection of some of my short stories.
Magnificat is a book that appeals to a broad range of readers with stimulating possibilities.
When I got the book, first of all, I wasn't so excited to read it because I thought it was one of those Nigerian books, that you would. And I finally picked up one of those days when I had nothing to do and I didn't drop it until I finished it. I laughed my way all through because it's actually very hilarious. But when you now drop the book, you now begin to look back and think of the lessons that are in each story. There are short stories in all of them, and each story has a lesson. And I don't think there's any empty story there. In as much as it's hilarious and entertaining, at the same time, there's a lot to draw from it. Morally, financially, it's just an empowering book, in my opinion.
The content of the review is a very, very practical book. It's a book that everybody can learn something from. It brings back very sweet memories of how people like us grew up, in the country, over the years.
By the first story, I was hooked because there's so much humor in it. He writes with a lot of wit, and I can actually see it also appealing to maybe a bit more international. You can sort of sell it abroad and it would do well.
An American TV company has expressed an interest in filming one of the stories, making it into a short movie. One of the stories in the book is called Palava, and seems to be very popular with everyone. And so there are talks at the moment. We are dialoguing with a few people to see how we can develop a movie series from Palava.
Gbenga has an interesting background. He majored in the sciences, works with a blue-chip company, and writes.
Given the opportunity, I'll have him again, I'll pick him again, So, he's a wonderful person, very brilliant. I'm learning from him.
Today's event is actually a culmination of all the flares we've had all over the years because we know that he had flares for writing, and has only demonstrated that in this book, Magnificat. It's wonderful.
He's a lector in the church. He reads during the Mass, and he's always read very well. He has a very good command of English, good diction. So whenever he reads, everybody in church kind of sits up to listen.
With his success story so far, we sought to know if he's considering taking writing as a full-time job.
The reading culture we have is terrible. People would rather invest in all kinds of things rather than books. So I'm not sure it is entirely feasible for anyone to take up full-time writing and be able to maintain a certain standard of living, which someone like me would like. I've got a wife and 3 children. I've got bills to pay. So at the moment, writing can only be a side project for me.
The reading culture in Nigeria brings to bear the collective responsibility and initiative of all.
Reading culture has changed. I will not say it has diminished. We were all book readers in our generation, but the children nowadays, if it's not cable or films, it's computer games. They hardly ever read books. So when things like this come out, it's very, very good. It's very pertinent because it would now make children go back to books.
I think authors should just be a lot more, find your target audience basically, your target readership. Lay your message across in a way that they can feel it. But I think trying to be overtly, using all the big English and trying to appear like a serious author doesn't always work, in my opinion. Be as simple as you can and make it readable. You understand what I'm saying? As long as it's readable, as long as it's entertaining, as long as it's educative, mix it up a little bit and get your target audience, and I'm sure it's going to flow.
Where you see libraries, there are no books. So what will people read? And the dailies at 100, 120, 200, it's even out of the reach of very poor people, really, people that are living below $1 a day. So it's a total thing. You can't just say reading culture has gone bad, it's poor, when there is nothing to read actually. You know, so I think to address it, we need a holistic approach.
The private sector will also help in this initiative by building libraries and equipping schools with a very, very good books, you know. And again, I think the media as well can also help. Well, because a lot of these young people like to watch TV. You know, if some of the things they're actually reading, you have a book review kind of a thing on TV, I think it also force people to go back and read.
Here is a moment of truth and food for thought.
I read something on the net once about some Caucasians abroad telling us about how easy it is to manipulate the black man, because even though information is there at his disposal, he still wallows in ignorance because he simply refuses to read. Anything that doesn't have pictures or anything, they're not interested. They just don't read, so it's easy to exploit them. So I think that's a bit harsh, really, but to be honest, we really don't have that reading culture, and it's very important. I really support that we, bring it up, adapt it, and, let it grow. Yeah, it's so important.
It's important that a conscious and deliberate effort on the part of all stakeholders, happens to make sure that especially children read, because they are the next generation of leaders, and you don't want a leader who is completely untutored, completely illiterate. I'm sure you know that acquiring a certificate is not the same thing as being literate. Totally different. So you will have, if we are not careful, as we have now, millions and millions of people, and especially youths and children, who have all kinds of qualifications, but they are totally illiterate because they don't read. If you don't read, you are, as far as I'm concerned, you are illiterate.
The world is a global village. The only way you can hold your own is how much you know. Empower yourself today by flipping through the millions and millions of books around you so you can carve your relevance in the society as the man standing before you now. Thekla Wilkie, AM Express.